let's just talk really quick about Seb.
Oh, yeah.
That's how this ended.
Who is he?
Okay.
When did he come into the picture? Welcome back to Straight Up Book Club. It's season 3.
It is season 3 after a month break.
Yeah. How was your break, Heather?
It was good. I went away for a couple of weeks. I went to Germany, a little bit of Dublin, a little bit of Amsterdam. I did get some writer's tears when we were in Dublin. We're actually drinking it right now, a little cheeky drink at noon. But we thought it would be fun. I'll show the bottle. It's writer's tears with a single pot still Irish whiskey.
It's such a pretty bottle too, and it's such a pretty label.
And it came with this cool tin, which I'm gonna use for something, but I don't know what. I would use it for change, but who has change anymore? I can't remember the last time.
Just rattling around.
I can't remember the last time I paid with cash. Should we start with a little cheeky sip?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Cheers to season 3.
Season 3. That's so nice.
That's really nice, yeah. It's a bit like how would you describe the difference from, it feels a little stronger.
I can definitely taste the tequila finish at the end. Oh my gosh, I learned this cool trick. I went to, when I was only in Dublin for a day to see my older sister. And we went to the Jameson distillery, which I think is pronounced Jamison.
Jamison.
It is. Okay, so I've been doing it wrong the whole time. So Jamison.
Wait, Jamison or Jameson?
Jamison.
Jamison.
And I don't know. This is what the tour guide kept saying. And I was like, have I been pronouncing it wrong this whole time? I kind of refuse to say Jamison, though, because I feel like it will sound pretentious, for literally everyone else. So I'm just going to keep calling it Jameson. But when we were in there, he said that if you, open your mouth slightly and sniff it, then you can, actually detect the notes a little.
Yeah, that's what
a
they
little
say
more.
At whiskey tastings too, I think.
Did they say that at the one that we went to?
It's so long.
We went to one a month ago.
Oh. It's it's been so long. It's been a month.
It's been too long. I have one more sip. One more cheeky sip.
Maybe they did.
All right. Okay. I think my cat wants to go hang out with my partner, so I'm going to open. Oh! He's settling in his bed. Morty,
I thought you were going to come join us.
Maybe he'll just chill. Maybe he'll come join in a bit.
Watch till the end to see if Morty comes joins us.
Okay, sorry. I feel like I derailed it. Okay, yeah, the break was good. Did some traveling. I got walking pneumonia, so I'm on... Yeah, the whole time I was gone, apparently. So I feel like I sound different. Nat has told me that I don't, so I'm just going to roll with it. Yeah. I'm on antibiotics, so as I drink this whiskey, I can't believe I just confessed that. It's fine. I looked it up. Anyway, sorry. How was your month?
It was good. It was less exciting. Didn't do too much, honestly. Just a lot of working. Had a scare with my cat. She's doing better now, but she definitely scared us for a good week, 10 days there. But yeah. She's back home. She's doing well now. Read a few other books. You probably also read quite a bit other than our podcast. So I read, actually, I'd been reading The Culture Code for a while. So nonfiction, I got back into nonfiction for a little bit. So I'd been reading The Culture Code for a while, finished that up finally. One of those books that just you take your time, and it had been months.
I do that with nonfiction. I usually have a nonfiction going while I read fiction, and I'll kind of read it during my lunch or before bed.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of The Culture Code though. What is that?
Yeah, I think I kind of mentioned a little bit about, the San Antonio Spurs and their coach and how their coach is coaching them, I guess, how he has a very human friendly approach to leading. So it's about leadership, and it's about just creating really strong connected teams. And the author, I forgot his name, he does sort of a case study of a few different teams. So he like looks at Zappos, Disney, and the Spurs, and then kind of like pulls out some principles, and I'm always like fascinated by stuff like that, so I was reading that for a while.
I love that. I think I'll read that next.
It's a good read.
I have a lot of nonfiction books on my like TBR, but I love adding to them. I always I don't know, I love a good nonfiction to balance out the other books that we're reading.
I also I didn't finish it yet, but I'm still reading the 4-Hour Workweek, and it's like it comes so recommended. It's by Tim Ferris. I'm finding a lot of it really dated, like, and I feel like a lot of it is like replaced by AI now. Maybe. I listened to the audiobook version. If I remember right, it's a lot about like Shopify accounts. Like, if you like open, or like one big chunk of it is like, if you open a Shopify account and sell like kind of like not great quality items for a profit and sell them on like third-party websites, then you can make a killing in passive income. But apparently he has like a lot of businesses, and a lot of it is like how to be more efficient in all parts of your life. Like, he talks a lot about like outsourcing parts of your life to, I don't know, these like personal assistant companies, I don't know, in like India and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I don't know if I need to optimize every single part of my life to this degree. Like,
I agree.
It's a lot.
I actually was listening to, and it was a podcast that you recommended to me, the Uberman.
Oh, the Huberman Lab.
Huberman. I don't know how to pronounce things. Jameson, Huberman. And there was an episode when they were talking about like your brain chemistry and like what gives you dopamine. And there's a moment that talks about like doing something hard actually gives you a big hit of dopamine. So I do think if we kind of like fall into too much of like the leisure class, not that I would be able to do that anyways, I do have to like work to put a roof over my head, but like if I did have the option to kind of do whatever I wanted, I do think that an element of doing some things that are difficult are good for you. Like I actually like cleaning my house. Like sometimes I don't always want to do it, but when the time comes when I have to like mop the floors and dust, and like there's a bit of pleasure that comes out of that. Like you put on a good podcast, you get to work, and I don't want to optimize that part of my life. Like I kind of want to still do it. I still like getting my own groceries. We do delivery a lot, but sometimes I do like going through a grocery store and like seeing what's there and carrying them home. Like I don't know, there's
That's interesting. I do not like cleaning, so I definitely like to outsource that. But stuff like food, right? Like for a while, I wasn't cooking very much. I was sort of doing like meal prep companies and trying that out. And I like cooking. I like having that hour or so a night where, I'm kind of turning my brain off, maybe listening to some music, just kind of preparing a meal. And just, I don't know. It's not that I love cooking or anything like that. It's just kind of like I'm challenging myself to do something I don't particularly like or am interested in. It's more just a routine too, right? And
I agree.
Miss out on that if you just start being like, all right, every hour of my life, every minute of my life needs to be have some ROI.
Yeah, I agree. Should we talk about the book?
Let's get into it. So what are we reading, Heather?
We are reading I had 2 sips of whiskey. We are reading Good Material by Dolly Alderton. I love this cover. I think it's so gorgeous. And yeah, I think the last book that we read, A Little Life, it was so good. It was so heavy. So we both agreed that we wanted to do something that's a little bit of a palate cleanser. It is about the end of a relationship, but I think that's something that everyone goes through at some point in their lives. And it's something that we can all relate to. And it's something that we can look back on with lightness, I think. I think most people anyways, maybe not the guy in this book, which we're going to get into. But I do think that it is something that feels really heavy in the time. But I think most of the time we look back on it and it's like, it's always good that those things happened when they did. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the first half. So it's up to page 157. So yeah, hopefully you've read up by now. So let's get into it. Let's chat about it.
Let's chat about it.
Yeah, you want to kick it off with like a little bit of a summary?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So it starts off, it's really funny how it starts off, I think anyways. This character, we learn that his name is Andy, and it starts off with a passage that says like, reasons why it's good I'm not with Jen.
Yeah.
And he lists out all of these reasons that some feel very like legit reasons, others just seem like he's really stretching for reasons why he doesn't like her. And then after he goes through those, we kind of see him unraveling a little bit in the wake of his breakup. I'm trying to remember what happens first, but essentially he is living with his mom, and then he goes from living with his mom to living with his best friend, and his best friend happens to be in a relationship with Jen's best friend Jane. So it's this weird couple or duo of couples, Andy and Avi and Jane and Jen, which I don't know about you, but the names are confusing me all the time. Like I had a while where I thought Avi was Andy and where Jen was Jane, and I have to kind of take a moment. I'm sure it was intentional, but like I have literally been like, for instance, like I'm writing a book now. At first the two characters were Anna and Hannah, and one of my beta readers immediately was like, you have to change the name Hannah, those names are too much alike. And I was like, that's legit, and I'm seeing why it's legit now. But he does kind of allude to moments in the book where that kind of like similarity in names somehow like seemed to ground them a little bit, because they called their WhatsApp group name like the A's and J's or something like that.
Oh, they did? I think I missed that. Interesting.
Maybe it was something else, but it was some sort of allusion to like the similarity of their names. Yeah. Anyway, so he moves in with his friend Abby and Jane, and he's there for a couple of days. He's looking for a new place to stay. Like Jane and Abby, they have 2 kids, I believe now. They're pregnant with a third. Mm-hmm. And so he finds like lodging on a houseboat, which is hilarious because apparently he gets seasick, and he's there for one night. It's not what he really signed up for. It's very cold. It leaks. And so after
oh leaks. My God. His landlord is like, oh yeah, that's normal.
And he has to like move it, like he can't park. He's like, yeah, just like every 2 weeks. He's like, can I just stay here? And the owner's like, no, God no. Like,
which I've never thought about. I just assume those houseboats just stay put, but I guess that makes a lot of sense. Like you have to pay
some
for that
do
spot.
I think most of them like pay for their spot, but like I don't know, it's wild. I think I mentioned in the places I was recently, one of them was Amsterdam, and you see houseboats everywhere. And all I could think of was like, I would be so sick because like any little jolt in the place, I would not be able to withstand it.
Okay, so I was thinking about the bathroom situation because it's like, he was like, it's a porta potty, and then you have to empty it, but then sometimes the place you have to empty it is full, and that's disgusting.
And then he said to do something else, and then Andy didn't
laterally
understand. But I don't know what that meant, and Andy didn't either. Do you know what that meant?
Like it doesn't go down, it goes sideways.
Ew. I still don't know what that means, but it's gross.
So it hits the side of your boat? Ew. I don't know. That's gross. Yeah. Well, not a great situation.
So that lasts one night, and I think we can all understand why.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, he finds lodging with this older guy. I think he's like 78, named Morris. And Morris's like main thing that he wants is to get a plaque on his house that states that George Harrison from the Beatles slept there one night to like crash out of friends. And this is his like mission in life. He also writes letters to Julian Assange.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Like, and sends him like 50 quid a week, which I think is hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And anyways, it kind of like the chapter ends, or not the chapter, the like 157 pages end with Andy is like doing a bit performance. He's a comedian at the mall, and that's when Jen appears, and she appears with another character whose name is Seb, and this seems to be her new boyfriend. And I didn't mention this, and if you read the book you already know that the reason that Jen says she broke up with Andy is because she wanted to be single. And there is a moment when they're at the bank, she like needs him to like go to the bank with her to close their joint account which is not a thing you have to do, by the way. And like Avi calls that out I don't know how it works in the UK, but like I've closed accounts before. You call and they're like, thanks, and they close it and you're good. But anyways, they meet up there, and when they meet up there, it kind of comes out that she knew she was going to break up with him before she told him, because she has like another apartment that she's renting out to tenants, and she kind of lets it slip that she had told them that they had to move out like a month before she broke up with him.
Yeah, that was really telling, that timeline. Like, there's been a lot sort of brewing in her mind for a while. We don't really know why. And that was actually one of the things that, like, I personally found missing. Like, I know this is, like, from Andy's perspective. Like, maybe we're not meant to get Jen's side of things because we're in Andy's head in a way, right? But I really want to know, like, what happened. You know, like, we know that Jen, you know, seems to have life a little bit more figured out than Andy does. So maybe that was part of it. We know that Andy wants kids, Jen doesn't, or says she doesn't. And Andy kind of assumes like doesn't want kids with Andy. So we have a lot of hints, but we don't have a lot of closure. And I'm almost like, I'm wondering if we are going to get that.
Yeah, I don't know. So far, Morty's definitely going to want to come out now. Parts of this kind of remind me a little bit of, did you ever read the book Fleischman is in Trouble?
No, but I watched the show.
The show.
Yeah. So
the book is very similar to the show, actually. I think the writer helped produce it. Essentially, you're getting the male protagonist's point of view from the beginning up until the very end, and then you get his wife's point of view, and it totally shifts your perspective on how that relationship ended. But the whole time that you're in his point of view, his breakup, his divorce, he becomes insufferable, and you're just like, oh my God, like what is wrong with you? And it's a great book, and I'm really liking this book too, excuse me. But like this main character is insufferable. Like, how are you feeling about him going through this breakup? Like, what is your take on Andy? Do you, like, in my head, I'm like, oh, if I was Jen, I would have broken up with Andy a long time ago.
Yeah. No, I'm on the same page. I've just been thinking like he reminded me of JB in a way, you know, like really stuck in the past of like JB from A Little Life, like very, very much like stuck in his 20s almost. He expects everyone else, like all his friends, to kind of be in a similar phase, even though, you know, all his friends are growing up, they have kids, they have families. And he's just kind of hit by that really hard after this breakup. Yeah, it just feels like he's trying to figure out work, but maybe he's like, I don't know, neglected some of his internal life for that. Like there was a moment that really struck me when he's with his mom and they're at the perfume counter, and there's this bit of introspection there where he's like, oh, am I this sort of bloke where, you know, women kind of share this eye roll over me because I just don't get it. And then he sort of lists out all the things that he didn't get about Jen, and some of it is just like really dumb, like, oh, like, why wouldn't she use shampoo and conditioner like 2-in-1, or like, why did she need, like, I forgot the list, but like it's a whole lot of like, okay, these are like basic women things, like you try to understand.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what they were. It felt like that typical, and I don't know, I was never single during the like dating app phase, but it felt like what some of our friends talk about when they're in dating apps. They're like, well, if you're going to be a woman who goes and gets her nails done, I don't want to be with you. Yeah. And it's like, okay, bro, like good luck. Yeah, he's very like, I love your association between him and JB, because you're right. He's very much a person who's stuck in the past. Mm-hmm. And like, he can't get over that. Like, he can't live in the moment because he's so past oriented. Yeah. And this theme comes up again and again, because not just when he sees Jen, but then when he sees Daisy.
Yes, yeah.
Even though he broke up with Daisy, he has this like narrative that she's just as broken as he feels, which makes me think, and I want to know your opinion on this. And I'm talking, and as I'm about to say this, I'm talking specifically about cis straight men. Mm-hmm. Do you think that they process breakups differently than women?
That's interesting. I don't know. Like it feels like it's so like dependent on the person, but I do feel like, you know, there can be a tendency to just focus on what's happening and not like the root causes. Like, so for example, like I think myself, like I think of patterns, I think of like how we landed here. Like I find myself being really analytical about situations, whereas I find like a cis straight man might not always do that. I don't know. But I'm also like wary of making like sweeping generalizations. I don't know.
No, for sure. For sure.
What do you think?
I agree, and maybe it's more so men I've dated, but I find men tend to, in my own experience, men tend to be actually like more emotional and more like stuck on the past. And a part of me wonders if maybe it's a little bit of that. Whether you believe this or not, I do think we do live in a civilization and in a society where there is still that like little tinge of like ownership in a hetero relationship between the man and the woman. And I think that like they feel like they've lost something that belonged to them. Whereas I don't know if like women have that same mentality, but
that's a great point. It's also interesting, like he's just so like self-indulgent, you know, and I feel like going back to like what you mentioned about Daisy too, like I was struck by that because it's like he needs to understand that she's doing okay and he did his part to kind of tie loose ends, but why does he get to do that now? She needed it back then. She doesn't need it anymore. She's moved past it. So maybe there's an aspect of maybe women can get there quicker.
Because she even says that like there's a moment when he runs into her, and we don't know this right away, but we know that he gets drunk after. He keeps getting drunk, like very, very drunk, to the point where I'm like, I'm a little nauseous, like reading the book at times. I'm like, oof, you are way past gone. And
do you think that's like, sorry to interrupt, is like UK culture in a way too?
I do.
Like,
I do. And I'm from the East Coast, where it is actually a little bit like culturally more, you know, it's the weekend, you get up and you have a beer and you kind of spend your day doing that. And so I do think like even like where I grew up is a little bit more similar to the UK culture in that sense. So yeah, it's not that surprising. But at 33 years old, I get very nauseous if I think about being drunk. So and then being on the boat,
as we have
our like noon whiskey. Oh my God. It was for the show. So that you all can go to Ireland and buy this duty-free limited edition writer's tears.
I need a writer's tear.
I forget the question. Sorry, we were talking about the voicemail. So he like gets blackout drunk. We don't really know what happens until later on when he gets a text message from Daisy saying that like he left a really inappropriate voicemail. And she's like, hey, like maybe I was a little upset like back then, like these many years ago, but I can assure you that I'm not anymore. And it sounds like you're projecting a little bit.
Yeah.
And I loved that. I loved how she articulated her message to him, where she's like, I moved on a long time ago. Get over yourself. Clearly you have your own issues.
Yeah.
I did love that moment.
It's so interesting because something like that happened to me, to be honest.
Oh my God, tell us. Oh, I need a sip of whiskey.
It was like, it wasn't even like a relationship. It was someone that I was sort of hanging out with, whatever, like no big deal sort of situation. It ended kind of weird. It was awkward, whatever.
You thought it was more?
Years later, like kind of recently, like a few years ago, and this happened in like university, so it's been a while, got a Facebook message from this person being like, I just want you to know why I did what I did. I'm like, okay, buddy, like I moved on. Like, it's so, all right, you needed that closure and I'm here for it, but I'm not gonna return it, you know?
Men are so weird. And I think that they do have this like weird sense. Sorry, and I'm making sweeping generalizations. I'm speaking from experience, and I feel like I should put that caveat there. But like, it's happened enough times for me to see a pattern where it's like, one guy messaged me like literally 10 years after a breakup being like, hey, hope you're doing well. And I'm like, bro,
we've moved on.
Like, are you serious right now?
Yeah, so that part was so relatable, right? Like, and I feel like maybe I've been on the other side of that too, where I'm like, okay, should I, like, you know, when you have those those like moments of like you remember shitty things you've done too, and you're like, oh shit, like do I need to do anything about that now? But you don't. It's been years, like it's in the past.
It would be weirder to do something about it.
Yeah.
No, but my mind goes there too, where I'm like, oh, like, and not just in like romantic encounters, like also like friendships from years ago. And I'm like, I should apologize to them. And it's like, am I only like really serving myself at that point? If I'm doing that, like if I'm going to apologize to this person I wronged 20 years ago when I was a kid, like, I feel like that person's probably moved on, and I'm just doing it so I feel better about myself. So at that point, it's like, maybe I don't. But clearly this guy doesn't have the wherewithal.
I'm so sorry. This just reminded me. That's happened to me too.
Oh my
God. Where like I literally got a message from someone who I went to high school with. Like not that long ago, I got a message being like, I'm so sorry about how I acted. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even remember what our dynamic was.
Do you know what it could be, though? I think in, like, Alcoholics Anonymous, there is a step where you do have to, like, go and...
make amends?
Yeah. With everyone you've ever wronged. So maybe it's those situations. I should edit all this out. Okay.
It's the people we attract.
Yeah. Anyways, so back to the book. It all has to do with the book. This book is just too relatable, clearly.
Yeah, like, okay. So one of the things I really wanted to talk about was Morris. I kind of
Yes.
love this character, and I love his relationship or his dynamic with Andy as well. Like, I feel like he's constantly trolling Andy.
Yes.
Like, he can never remember what Andy does for a living, and he keeps saying stuff like, I don't know, like a singer or I don't know, never a comedian. I think at one point he was like, oh, you work at a casino, right? Like, it was so strange. But I think like the clincher for me, and this is such a boomer moment, was where he goes like, you know, Andy, you should work for a talk show. Like you should be a late night show host. I'm sure like they're looking for someone. Like, why don't you reach out?
That reminded me of my mom when I was like a teenager. Maybe I wasn't I was probably in my early 20s. Yeah, I think it was my early 20s. And she really wanted me to date the guy from Criminal Minds, like Matthew Gray Gubler's character, who I did think was cute. Maybe I accidentally said that one day. And she was like, you should write him a letter.
He's gonna read it.
Yeah, you should write him a letter. I bet he'd want to date you, which is like, thanks, Mom. Like, fangirling real hard. But I had that thought. I was like, this is such a boomer thing to do, to think that you could just be like, hey, I want to be a talk show host, like a Graham Norton kind of situation. And there's just like a seat waiting for you.
It reminds me of that episode of It's Always Sunny where Charlie's like, why don't I just go to the jobby store and get myself a little jobby from the jobby tree?
Morris is like, does a part of him feel like he's like almost playing hard to get? Like there's a weird pattern here of like relationships, and he seems like the guy who's like, oh, what is it you do again? Sorry, what's your name again? Like those people who you'll meet and they'll be like, I don't remember your name. I'm like, yes, you do. Like if you don't remember someone's name, you don't say it. You're like, hey, and then you just avoid their name. Morris is a little bit like, oh, what is it you do again? And maybe he legitimately doesn't remember. But I do think he's a little bit of a lonely man, and like Andy's kind of picking up on that a little bit. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting for me, because as insufferable as this character is, and as much as I'm like, oh my God, Andy, like just like live in the present, move on, his endearing moments come with Morris, I think. Mm-hmm. Like he's trying with him. He's being very patient every time Morris doesn't remember what he does. He invites him for a beer, which I think is really cute. Andy has that moment where Morris is like, oh, there's finally like a journalist coming who's going to do an interview on how like it's an outrage or a disgrace that I don't have this plaque in the front of my home. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Andy, if they talk to you, will you tell them that it's a disgrace? And Andy's like, sure, no problem. And he does do it. And Morris is so excited. He leaves like the paper at his door, and there's just these like really sweet moments where it's like, oh, Andy, like maybe you are a good person. Maybe there's some like, not that he's a bad person, but like not such an annoying person.
I even got a sense of that with his mother, actually, because he had a moment where he's like, oh, like, maybe I haven't lived up to my expectations, like, or your expectations of me as your son. And like, because his mom comes to visit and he doesn't have a place for her to stay, and he's feeling really badly about it, and he like goes down that rabbit hole. But yeah, you're right. Like, it's the more sort of like, I don't know, better parts of him that come out in those moments. Did you also notice how Morris is like, he's got a bunker, and he's sort of like picking up like stuff to like put in that bunker or whatever, just like, I think he's like freezing some things, and I was like, did he predict COVID? Is that what happened?
Oh, this is pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Oh shit, you're right. Okay, that's actually really interesting. And because
he's like stocking up, and he's like, oh, like, my Facebook groups where we exchange information, like something's going around, something's gonna happen, something big. And then I think it was just before COVID.
It was. So. And you're right, there's a moment when Andy walks in and he's like getting potatoes ready to freeze. Like, the last thing, like, I freeze a lot. Like, I'm very like, if I have leftovers and I know I'm not going to get to them, I freeze them. Like, I was raised to not waste food. I've never thought of freezing potatoes before, so now I'm going to start my tiny condo freezer. But yeah, that's a great theory.
It's funny. He's
Nat.
Right. Morris he's wise.
I'm gonna start looking for other things that he's predicting, because I totally saw that as like a doomsday prepper character, kind of similar to do you watch the show Abbott Elementary? So good. Yeah, that there's a recommendation for you all. I've cried so many times. It's kind of like a heartwarming show, but it's also hilarious. But the principal in it is a doomsday prepper, but she doesn't seem like your typical doomsday prepper because she's so glamorous. I love it. Watch Abbott Elementary.
I'm gonna check that out. I really liked how we found out about Andy and Jen's relationship, like how they met. That one and that part of the book, I think it was pretty early on, actually. Like, I don't know, it was so like it made me feel floaty. Like, I actually just rewatched Gone Girl, and it reminded me of, you know, that part of the movie or the book where we get to know their relationship and how they met. Like, it kind of gave me those vibes in a way. Like, it's just so like, you know, you meet someone and you instantly connect, and they just get you. And that's sort of the feeling I got. So and just getting to go into that before this unraveling, I just thought that was really nice.
Very relatable in the sense where it's like that moment at the beginning of a relationship where you're kind of like discovering things about the other person, or like, there's always those moments where like, oh, you've never heard of this, and you're like, teach me. Which actually there is that passage which I really thought went deep into Andy's psyche and made me like have a little bit more of a fondness for him, when he talks about how, you know, when you enter into a new relationship, you have your own interests and discoveries, and that person does as well. And then when you become a couple, you kind of, these interests become interwoven, but then when you leave, it feels wrong to bring those discoveries into another relationship. And I thought that was so poignant and so beautiful, and I wanted to know what you thought about that.
I love that so much, because you do have some sort of guilt about it, right? You're like, oh, like, an ex showed me this, and then I came to love it, and now it's something I hold close to me, even though that relationship is gone or in the past. So I thought that was a really great articulation of that. I think it also ties into what happens when you end that relationship, right? Where it's not just you who's affected. It's not you and your partner that you're breaking up with that's affected. It's like your friends, so your couple of friends that you're breaking up with too. So it's almost like you discovered interests, but also new relationships. And so some of that you actually do have to let go, right? Because those dynamics aren't going to continue anymore. And it's sort of like many breakups inside this breakup, and so like I really loved how those two concepts tied in together too.
Especially the longer you've been together. Like this couple was together for almost 4 years. That's not an insignificant amount of time. Like that's when in the 4 years, like that's usually when you start to see their family as your own and vice versa. And you're right, like it's no longer like my friends and your friends, it's our friends. Some of those relationships can stay, but it's never going to be the same.
Yeah, and it's also like in your 30s, you know, you're going through so much change. Yeah. So that's a big part of it too, because now, yeah, maybe there's a bit more discovery in that period as well.
That's such a good point.
Phase, yeah.
The timing of this one is rough because it's like he is in his 30s, you know, and all of his friends, and this is a theme that seems to keep coming up, all of his friends have wives or partners. A lot of them have kids. If they don't have kids, they have like their own routines that they're really into. Like everyone's kind of established their own routine outside of partying with your single friends. Mm-hmm. And I feel like breaking up at that point in your life is so much harder than when you're in your 20s. And you're in your 20s, you break up. Literally, I've gone through breakups in my 20s where people are like, high five, now we can like party. And you're like, great, you know, you have the support systems there because they don't, like, you are each other's support systems. Mm-hmm. But when you're in your 30s, it's harder.
That was like something that comes up too, right? In your 20s, your friends like prefer you single, right?
Yes.
In your 30s, your friends prefer you in a relationship because like it just aligns better. It's more convenient, and that part of it sucks.
And as we discussed it actually does make me have a little bit more sympathy for Andy's character, because it's like he had that partner, and like even though they weren't married, it sounds like they were common law, like it was a relationship. Like I feel like at like 3-4 years you feel like you're married, you know, if you're living together, and like they had a joint bank account. Like that to me says, you know, a committed partnerships, because you do have like those things that cement you in a relationship. Like I'm sure he didn't have doubt about his relationship, even though it sounds like she did. So I think that would be a much harder thing to go through.
Yeah.
What did you think about how his friends reacted to the breakup? Because it seems like Jane's friends were a lot more endearing and a lot more like they did kind of like a spa weekend away and everybody rallied for it. And then for Andy, he really struggled getting his friends to even like go have drinks with him for one night.
Yeah. I think it like ties to how much more in tune with their feelings Jen's friends are, and Jen too. Because I think he says at a point, he's like, I've walked into, you know, her and her friends sitting in a circle, kind of talking about their feelings and like really unpacking them. I think he said something like pulling out a feeling and just kind of showcasing it, like, this is how I'm feeling. And he just can't relate to it because he's like, I don't even know the words I would use to describe how I'm feeling. So I think it goes alongside that, because you need a spa weekend. You need some sort of like clear, safe space to really get into what you're feeling. Sometimes, you know, sometimes going for a drink isn't enough. You kind of just need to be held and kind of, you know, have space and time to get to where you need to be. I don't think Andy's friends are going to do that. So they just kind of need to get blackout drunk together, and then maybe something spills out, maybe it doesn't. But you're right, like they didn't even ask him about it till he brought it up. So there's that part of it too. Maybe they kind of just didn't want to go into it.
It's interesting too, because there's a point when he talks about how he doesn't want to be so annoying. So there's a slight amount of self-awareness there, and he says that he has to use his Jen tokens sparingly, so that his friends like don't get annoyed. So he's like, okay, if I say this, then I have to pull back. I don't think that like Jen's friends are doing that. I don't think Jen is feeling that way. I think it's like if you feel like you need to say it, you can say it, but with him it feels more calculated. Yeah. And it probably is because, you know, like you said, he can't, you know, you're not going to share your emotions, you're not going to put it on display. And him even like mentioning Jen, I think for him is putting his emotions on display, so he feels like he has to like kind of hide it a little bit. Yeah. Which would make going through a breakup a lot harder. maybe that's why women can get through them faster, because we
More
can actually
support.
talk about them.
And process them. Yeah. I do think that Avi, it seems to be a little bit more in touch with his emotions.
Totally. I like
Yeah.
Abby a lot.
Yeah, he's probably like the only one who's like fully there for Andy and like trying to like corral all their friends together for him too. But even he starts to get frustrated, right?
And of course, like, you are married, you have 2 young kids, she's pregnant with your third, and your friend who just broke up is like living with you. That's a lot. Like, it's already a lot having kids and then having to take care of another person in your house.
Yeah.
And there's a scene when he comes home from the bar and he's like in Abby's clothes in his bed, and he wakes up and he asks Abby, and Abby's like, oh, don't worry about it, like, it was just a bit of balloon. They were like doing helium, which I didn't even,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm such a square, but like, I didn't know that people did that as like a drug. Like, I've definitely like been given a balloon to change my voice, but I've never tried to get high off of it. But I guess it's a thing. And they did balloons, and who knows what happened after. But like, Abby kind of had to like bring him home, get him changed, put him in bed. Like, that's another kid to take care of. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it really like the helium, they really glamorize some of it. Well, kind of, or normalize some of this. Like, even the part about cigarettes, I feel like they were really talking about cigarettes like a lot at the beginning of this book. And it kind of reminded me of like how I used to smoke. I don't smoke anymore, but I remember when I used to watch Mad Men, it made me really want to have a smoke. And I could see like the beginning of this book doing that for someone. I'm not there anymore, so I didn't crave a smoke, but like I can see how, you know, some of this.
I do think that's also a bit of like UK culture as well. Like, I do think smoking is probably more normalized than it is here. I feel like it is like in a lot of countries outside of North America. I feel like Canada and the US has like a different perspective on smoking.
Yeah, it's almost like so like now when I see people smoking, I'm like, people still do that.
Yeah. Also drinking while pregnant, like, because when I was in Europe, my sister-in-law was with us, she's pregnant, and everywhere we went, she'd be like, oh, I can't drink, and they'd be like, because I'm pregnant, and they'd be like, so you can have one, like. Like, why? Like, yeah, you can what are you talking about? And so I do think there's just some like cultural things that are coming through in this that oh god, it's we have a documentary to go to. Okay, should we wrap this up?
Let's do it. I think we got through, you know, most of the things that we wanted to talk about.
Let's just talk really quick about Seb.
Oh yeah.
That's how this ended.
Who is he?
Okay.
When did he come into the picture?
We end the book on like Jane coming to the mall when Andy's doing his stand-up bit, and Seb is there with her, and we find out that like they've been dating, and Andy doesn't know who this guy is. And I didn't read ahead, but when I turned over the page, we do know, because I think it's titled like Everything I've Learned About Seb.
Ooh, okay.
Do you think there's overlap there? What do you think?
I think there might be overlap there. Wait, did I also read it? No, I didn't. But like, did he allude to that they work together or something? I don't know. I might have just made.
Oh, that was the first line. Yeah, so I did read that line
in the first line of the next page. Okay,
that we weren't supposed to read yet.
We're
but
trying so hard not to that we just couldn't.
We
help
couldn't
but
help
pick up.
ourselves. We do know that they work together, so I'm excited to get into that when we find out who Seb is. I hope we get a little bit more background on how they get together. I'd love to get I'd love to like find out more from Jen's perspective, so I'm hoping that there's some sort of meeting between Andy and Jen where we see what played out. But
yeah,
I don't know, we'll find
I'm
out.
excited. Okay, tune in next week and we'll talk about all the things that we found out.
My sister's arriving now because we're late for the documentary. See you next time.
See ya.
Bye.